Hey, and welcome to our postseason edition of the East County Prep Football Report. I think we'll have one postseason edition after the quarterfinals. Dave, kind of wrap up the season with Dave Dickens. I'm Ramon Scott. Dave, last week I told you maybe we could get West Hills head coach Casey Ash to join us to wrap up the season, but I don't know. I don't know if Coach was big timing us. He's a successful, had a league championship, undefeated season. We said, hey, can you get together on Sunday? But he said he was going to be busy, Dave, but you got to the bottom of the story. Why couldn't Coach Ash join us last week?
Well, I'll let him tell that story. I don't want to spoil anything.
Coach,
last Sunday, I was lucky enough to be invited up to SoFi Stadium by the Chargers, along with all of the other Chargers Coach of the Week winners over the course of the season, and they treated us to a game. So we got to go up and watch their game against the Vikings last Sunday. Very exciting. First time at the stadium, and very impressive.
Yeah, and everybody knows by now, Coach Casey Ash was honored by the Los Angeles Chargers as the San Diego County Coach of the Year. Congratulations, Coach, on that well-deserved honor. And we really weren't going to have you on. We got together for this occasion to celebrate that award, and also to ask you about the postseason and the success that the team had. But just want to extend our congratulations. We saw the pictures of you there, and what company you had joining you. Coach Ron Berner, Coach Chris Holmes. Did you guys ride up together?
No, we didn't. But
okay, good, because that would have been boring.
A good East County contingent there. But I was lucky enough to ride up with the best company of all, my own father, and he and I got to take in the game together. So that was a good day.
Oh, I bet. Coach Casey's dad, Dave, Rick Ash, legendary coordinator, coach. When I was a student reporter, Dave, and Helix was having all those successful years, and I'm a student on the Highland Fling, sports editor. Coach, got to be honest, Coach Casey's easy to talk to compared to Coach Ash, at least when I was 16 years old. Coach Rick Ash, Dave.
I'm just amazed that of the history. I mean, up until talking to you, I mean, my dad's mentioned so many things to me over the years. I mean, from I would say his young age of 5 years old, probably, of, oh, this coach did this coach did that, and this player, did you know that he knows this guy and he played with the Chargers? And I got to take in all the some of the greatest moments and meet some of the legends, the Chuck Muncies of really the real Chargers, as I'll refer to them as, of the 80s, the Eric Coryell days, my personal opinion. Yeah, I mean, when you mentioned that he had links to Helix, that was a shock to me, as a matter of fact. I mean, we all know about Coach Berner and Coach Casey working together, and then Tony Berner as well playing at West Hills. So then to hear that there's another tie to it over at Helix, so there's even a Scotty involved in it. So,
Coach, before we praise you and talk about all the great players, share with me. I'm a huge admirer of your dad for all those years, seeing him with his, you and him have that same posture in a way, that walk, that stride of confidence, and he coordinated some of the best defenses this part of the county's ever seen in his years. And tell me about your relationship with him, and maybe even tie it down to your trip up there. How do you get along at a football game? Do you enjoy? Do you cheer? Or were you guys, do you see some things and talk about it, football lingo?
Oh, I appreciate you asking, Ramon. Yeah, obviously my dad was a longtime defensive coordinator at Helix with Coach Arnice, who also was nice enough to call and send me a message this week. It was great to hear from Coach Arnice and congratulating me on the award. But so he'd been there for a long time with a lot of other great coaches and players, obviously, kind of establishing that Helix dynasty, I guess you could call it now. They were kind of just starting out and trying to find their way at first, and eventually found it. And of course, other guys have taken the ball since Coach Arnaz and run with it. But I was lucky enough to watch a lot of great Helix football teams growing up and hang out with my dad there and, learn from him the X's and O's and how to deal with people. And then lucky enough, once I started coaching and became a defensive coordinator and eventually a head coach, to have him, agree to come over and help me out at little old West Hills. So he coached with us at West Hills for probably 3 or 4 years, maybe even more than that, as well. At one point ran our defense when I was first the head coach. And so just very lucky to have had his guidance, and obviously without people like him and Coach Arnaz and Coach Sutton and many others, I would not be in the position I am where, I get to be a head football coach.
Dave, and the players and Coach, as much as we've kind of ramped up our own publicity for Coach Ash as a coach of the year, he's our coach of the year as well in the East County. It's only obvious, and he'll be a contender. He wants that county coach of the year. I wouldn't say he wants it or desire. Yeah, maybe he does. I'll say it for him. But a lot of great coaches also will be in contention. But Coach Ash is on the short list for county coach of the year. But Dave, he loves to heap the praise on his assistants, but also his players. And man, these guys were just special this year. Look, Dave, a lot of teams are always going to say, oh, nobody's picking us. And maybe that wasn't the case. And I'm not tooting our own horn. It's on the record right here on, YouTube. Go back a few rows down, couple months down, where we thought the Wolfpack were the league champions. But I don't know if we thought undefeated league champions, Dave. And I don't mean just undefeated in league. The perfect regular season hasn't happened around the East County in a long time, Dave.
I would say that if we want to go back on that, I just simply said, I would say by game 2 that I'm looking at that Tony Burner Cup or trophy. We still Coach Burner calls it a cup, so I'm gonna.
No. He is insistent. It is a trophy.
And yeah, he told me.
I think you nearly ripped my arm off that.
No, we were talking
championship night to tell me that.
When we were talking anyway, but it was after the modern day game, so he was kind of in a different he was in a different place at that moment. But that's a whole different story of that game and that division and all that good stuff for another day.
Oh, but, we're talking about today. We'll get to it.
Yeah, well, just not a happy camper on that. But anyway,
on that side.
I was thinking that at the beginning of the season, I just looked at the calendar and the scheduling, and I said, well, those are always big games anyway, the City Cup and then the Tony Burner Trophy. And I said, boy, I tell you, if you look at the teams, the way they stack up on paper, and then just after even one game, I said, that last game of the season, regular season, is definitely going to have playoff implications. So I'll say I went as far as that. As far as saying that they were going to be undefeated, I don't think really anybody by game 1 or 2 of the season can really say that about any team, whether it be professionally, college team, Pop Warner. I mean, not that early in the season, but I did figure that was going to be a huge game, as well as Santana, just because of the rivalry portion of that. So. Did I think that the El Capitan was going to be big, though? I thought it was going to be huge. And sure enough, regular season game, undefeated season on the line. I thought that was the biggest, and it ended up being true as could possibly be.
What a night that was. Coach, I'll make it fair on you, and fair to everybody. And you don't have to respond to it necessarily, but you can react and talk about that game. But it's one thing to be expected to win every single game. And there are teams that get that moniker every year because they're usually the best team in their league. And then maybe they're the best team in the rest of their schedule. And maybe West Hills was expected to win all these games if you look at the numbers. But it's another thing to go out and do it. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's hard for a group of 16-year-old and 17-year-old kids to show up every week and play well. That's just difficult to do that 10 times in a row. And, one thing that you heard me say over and over the course of the season was what a mature group it was. And really this was the fruit of 4 years worth of effort with this particular group of seniors. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the parents as well. The parents were obviously extremely supportive, not only in getting the kids to where they need to be, but in helping me to get this Chargers award. Obviously it takes votes. So had a lot of support from the parents there, which I appreciate, but the commitment from many parents, not only to get their kids to our stuff for West Hills, but doing things outside of what we do to help their kids pursue their dreams of becoming great football players. When they were freshmen and we got together at the banquet, we talked about really committing ourselves and seeing what we could make of it in 4 years. And that took everybody, coaches, players, and the families of the players to make that happen. At the end of the day, you always want it to go longer. There's no doubt about that. But hopefully we made some special memories along the way with this season kind of being the culmination of that.
Well, Dave, we saw it ourselves in our own way, right? We talked about it privately, how energized the fan base was with our programming, right? You saw West Hills show up here every week. They couldn't get enough of their team. And that's the way it is when you have a magical season. I mean, we've seen it kind of in this town. It's kind of bittersweet, Coach Ash, to go up to LA to get that award, I guess, in a way. But, you talked about, in your quotes, how beautiful the stadium it was and everything like that, and the hospitality. So, we'll cut you some slack on that. But, yeah, you got to have that Chargers jersey underneath that West Hills blue jacket you have, right? There's a game coming up. You still with
I'm not a big jersey wearer. When you coach football, it kind of ruins you as a fan. You
got that was like an award, though, in a way, to get that jersey with your name on it in that powder blue. I mean, I would imagine, if it were me, that'd be something that'd be going up on the trophy wall.
Yeah, that's probably its destiny more so than actually being worn on Sundays. But yeah, that was very cool. I don't know if that's something they've ever done before. The last time I was involved in the Chargers Coach of the Week thing was, I want to say 2014, but They were still here at Qualcomm, and obviously they had us out to the game then as well. But very different experience, but the jersey was a cool surprise. I mean, there's so much going on in the stadium. When you're on the field, it's hard to know what's really happening. So I was surprised as anybody, but it was definitely a cool experience.
Yeah, Dave, in fact, in researching some of the stuff for the story and seeing some of the those pictures that came out, I did find a picture of Coach Ron Berner, and I don't know who we're playing that day. It might be neat to go back and look, but it might have been done at halftime because it looked like the crowd was. I think Coach Ash, your award was a pregame award this time, right? But I saw Coach Ash with Chargers cheerleaders around. I mean, Coach Berner with Chargers cheerleaders around him at midfield back in 2014 at Qualcomm Stadium. So that was a great season. You talk about the great, some of the great seasons. This one will rank right up there, really, in recent memory, probably in this century, despite all the success our teams had, because an undefeated season, Dave, is so hard to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think that really the camaraderie and everything going on around him, I think probably from what Coach explained to me, I think probably the biggest surprise was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Coach, is being just happening to see folks that had tickets to the game already, and they didn't know prior that you were going to be awarded this type of award. And be recognized. They were just going up north to go catch a football game with the LA Chargers playing the Vikings. Whether they're Vikings fans or Charger fans, they were just going to catch a game. And little did he know, some staff members, some students end up recognizing Coach Ash and him recognizing them. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Coach, that was probably the biggest surprise of all.
Yeah, that was cool. Obviously, I didn't hear about it until afterwards. But yeah, later that evening, I got an email with a picture from one of our teachers who happened to be at the game and took a picture of me on the big board there and was surprised to see me. And then I heard last week from one of our freshman football players that they were at the game and saw me. And so that was a cool little coincidence there. But yeah, it was fun and definitely a memorable experience. And they took thank you to the Chargers. They took excellent care of us there.
See, Dave, there are fans from San Diego still going to see the Chargers. So I don't know. I didn't break up with the Chargers. They broke up with me. So, and I still am, in my own defiance, still calling them. I don't do it accidentally. I call them the San Diego Chargers. So one day they will return. Dave, let's talk about the West Hills Wolfpack and that great season. The players, Coach talked about the maturity, the growth of the players, and look at the leadership that they did get from those seniors. I mean, I think because of the respect they probably get from their teammates, because at West Hills, I mean, you come up through the organization, if you will, through all the levels at West Hills, and they ended up with some great seniors, Dave. But the cupboard isn't bare. This wasn't just a one-time shot. The West Hills Wolfpack has proven it over the last couple of years with the success at their lower levels as well, with undefeated seasons and victories. This was kind of coming. I don't know. Maybe Coach had the expectation that, with as well as the younger teams had done over the last couple of years, that they were going to be in title contention. I mean, it was obvious to everyone heading into the season that the teams that were in contention were the teams that competed until the final night.
Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience, and was fortunate to. As many people know, my son attends West Hills High School, and he had the opportunity to play on that freshman team. So he would have been on he possibly could have been on the varsity team this year. Coach and I have joked about that, and some of it's tongue in cheek, but a little bit it rubs me a little bit the other way. But it's neither here nor there. He was fortunate to play on a freshman team under Coach Young, who has returned. We all know Coach Young had a great player and a great quarterback for the Pack for a couple of years, and Jordan Young, who's over at Mesa now, San Diego Mesa College, working special teams. Fortunately got injured, but he was doing pretty well over there. But my son Sebastian got to experience an undefeated season, or not an undefeated. I believe they lost one game, but they had a fantastic team too. Another, like you said, coming up through the ranks. A lot of great players came from that roster that did stick around too, and I'm sure Coach Ash could attest to that as well. And the way that it works like that, I think, is everybody's got the same verbiage, same type of play calls, and you just continue to go up through the ranks, kind of like a college program would do too. And I think that's pretty much the best way to go about it and develop a great team and a great program. Correct me if I'm wrong, Coach.
No, absolutely, and you're right that Coach Young did a great job. He's not with us at this time, but did a great job for a few years down there with the freshmen, developing the kids and turning out some great teams. And it does play some sort of role. Obviously, to go undefeated, circumstances have to kind of align. The schedule has to be right. You got to stay healthy. You got to have a great team. All of those things have to come together. But I don't know how many teams ended up finishing the regular season undefeated. I don't know what that exact number is, but it was a small group, and we also went undefeated on the JV as well. So I'm sure a very small group that went undefeated on both levels there. But yeah, you're right. We don't feel like the cupboard's bare. You know, usually when you have a season like that, you're kind of like, oh well, that was fun, and now we're going to have to kind of rebuild. But no, I think we're in a great position where we feel like we've got another group of kids ready to go, and we're going to maintain a high level of play. And certainly you can't expect to be undefeated, but you know, we expect to keep playing well and competing for league championships.
Well, it takes a village, and you mentioned, you know, the success throughout the ranks. I'd take this opportunity, Coach, who, you know, we know Coach London's an elite coordinator for you defensively, and you can also mention your varsity assistants. But man, it may be a great opportunity to talk about some people who are going to continue to be with you. Look, a Coach of the Year title. To get to this at this point, at this level, to have the season that you did, and you talk about all that success. I mean, you know, they helped build it with you. I would think.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ramon. Yeah, really, a Coach of the Year is kind of a misnomer for football in particular. You know, there might be other sports like a basketball where the head coach is really the guy, but in football, it's quite different. So
I don't want to interrupt. I want you to name these guys, but I'm saying, you know, Coach of the, okay, maybe not Coach of the Year too, but like Organizer of the Year, man, you got all these people together on the same page and you're leading it. So that's what I mean, and I think I agree with you. But go ahead. I want to know about these guys.
Gotcha. So you mentioned Quentin London has done a great job for us. Is an alum of West Hills, did a great job for several years now as our defensive coordinator. But also on the defense side of the ball, we had Troy Deal, who's been with me for a long time, coaching our defensive line. Then we got a huge addition just as the season was starting this year, and a veteran assistant coach who ended up working with our linebackers named Gary Schneider, did a great job for us. We had Matthew Guccione, who's another alum, step in and help us, particularly with the JV defensive backs. Coach Nathan Vale, who kicked at West Hills when the school first opened, and ended up going on and kicking for the Lobos there in college. And he's been our special teams guy and specialist guy for a while at West Hills, and does a great job. Helps out with a lot more than just the specialists there. And then on the offensive side of the ball, we had Coach Eric Figge, whose name you might remember as a great West Hills football player my first time around. He was working with our wide receivers, and we were lucky to get him back into the fold. Coach Hondo Harada did a great job calling the JV offense for us, and worked with our varsity slot backs. Another alum, you know, we're lucky to have a lot of those guys come back. And then up front, we had Coach Tony Abadi, another veteran guy. It's good to have some of those guys with gray hair around to kind of point you in the right direction every once in a while. And then a young guy who we stole from the Sultans, Jake Kitten, who was an offensive lineman for the Sultans just a few years ago, and then went off to Nebraska, and is now back and teaching with us at West Hills. Was a great addition and helped us with the offensive line. And then down on the freshmen, they were headed up by Coach Hondros. Lucas Hondros is also our athletic director, and was one of the guys who I'm sure helped this voting movement gain some steam by spreading the word. So got to shout him out. And Coach Kitten helped him out down there. And we got Coach Seth Maxton working with our specialists and our receivers down the freshman level. And then Coach Sean Kappas assisting us this year with the freshmen. So as you said, it takes a village. And on top of that, you put the great booster club and parents and all of those things. And that's how you have some success.
And the one that and so he doesn't get into any hot water. I know he mentioned his wife also as a part of the of organizer and getting those votes in as well, as I recall. And it's funny, he mentioned Nathan Vale, and I went to West Hills for 1 year in 1991, and now that I recall, and I know it's the same guy, I believe he wore glasses, but at the time he had red hair. I don't know if he still does, but he had red hair, and I do recall him like it was yesterday. And definitely a good person to have on hand and on staff. Definitely a fun guy to be around too, as I recall, and that was years ago. But I still remember some good times. But
Hey,
Yeah, it's we got a great group of guys right now, and obviously when you're having some success, it's everything goes a little bit better when you're winning games for sure.
Coach, I saw you mentioned Dave West Hills. Great success on both sides, but I think great special teams too. Coach, kind of one of your subtle proudest moments. We talk about some of the East County players on the Aztecs this year, but maybe one of the biggest moments of the season came from a former Wolfpack
Yeah.
player,
Yeah, that was awesome, and not just a Wolfpack player, but
a star.
great West Hills family.
Okay,
Mom was our Booster Club president for several years, is still active, was working the snack bar at our playoff game this year, even though Jack's been gone for a couple of years, and Jack's older brother Dallin played for us as well. And it was a great moment. I saw.
Were you watching it live?
I did not, unfortunately. I just turned off. I just switched from the Aztec game to the I think it was the USC game, and actually Coach Figgy texted the group chat and said, "Hey, here's what just happened, man. Can you believe it?" And so I flipped it back over, and I caught it as they were coming back from commercial and replaying what had happened. So
is that something now? I guess he wouldn't run that role in the West Hills special teams back then, but it couldn't have surprised you.
Absolutely not. No, he was a great athlete. And we actually, he comes out and kicks with us every once in a while. We saw him quite a few times during the spring when we were playing, and he was trying to get some kicks in. So, awesome. Very happy for him. And he's worked hard to get to where he is now. And obviously he's kind of behind.
It's right. It's not bad to be the backup to the most elite kicking prospect maybe in a decade, right? I mean, I don't know
if he's going to back somebody up. I guess he would be the guy.
I mean, he's Ariza is either the next, Ray Guy. He's either the next Ray Guy or Nick Franklin or somebody. I mean, we know he might be the first guy in a long time that punts and kicks in the NFL. The guy's that talented. But when Jack made the play, Jack Browning made the play Dave of the year, maybe for San Diego State. It was awesome.
Well,
Dave.
Remember he also he made his mark everywhere he went. I mean, and we forget to forget his short stint over wearing the green and gold.
That propelled him. I mean, he was great. He was great there on teams that didn't
phenomenal.
Yeah,
he was probably. I remember Coach Jordan actually saying that he was the probably his best player on the squad at the time. Now, granted, they had some tough years around that time, but for him to even state that, though, speaks volumes about Jack and how what he brought to the team. Not only making those long kicks and efficient kicks, but a sideline guy too. He was great to have around the squad, and that's according to head coach Mike Jordan.
Hey, Coach. You're gonna, like we said, the cover's not bare, but you're not gonna get a chance to take the field with these seniors, and maybe you could just mention a couple of them that have been standouts, captains, whatever. As far as deep as you want to go, I want to hear from you. But they came up through those ranks you mentioned, and man, they performed in the most crucial moments of the season this year.
Yeah, and a great group of young men. And what I'm going to remember most about the group is just the amount of love and care they had for each other, and that's to me what really makes the difference. But obviously, guys like Braden Oberg and Dylan Freund and Dylan Snyder and Cohen Benavente, Max Conaway. These are guys who spent the bulk of 3 years on the varsity and certainly made their mark during the course of that time. And you've seen their names and seen their statistics, but there's a lot of guys, behind the scenes as well. And those are the kids who really make the difference. Guys like Ashton Callan, who was a two-way all-league guy, Trevor Mbimbo, two-way all-league lineman, Yad Galali, Andrew Engstrom. And to me, the senior linemen really were the difference makers for this team and our previous teams. They were the difference between 10-0 and 7-3 were the senior linemen and the way they had developed over the last 4 years. But then we also had seniors, who were willing to work their tails off in the summer and in practice and give great scout looks and do all of those things without necessarily getting the reward of playing on Friday nights. And, those guys, they only did it because they cared about their teammates and wanted to get them ready and give them the best look they possibly could. So that's where the kind of maturity and unselfishness comes in. And that's what made this group special.
Dave, that's the emotion that we saw from the seniors, I think, on that night against El Capitan. Sure, the playoffs were important and they wanted to probably win more than one game, but, getting the trophies were important, but I think that league title for them on that particular night, and when we spoke to several seniors, look, the way West Hills put it, this is why, yes, undefeated season can win you the Coach of the Year, but look, while some other teams, not just in the East County, but around the county, especially in the high school level, sometimes, rely on just a core group of big-time stars, I think it's easy to say, and, West Hills has the balance, right? It's more of a expanded cohesiveness throughout the whole, starting unit and their backups performing well. Sometimes some other teams have needed to rely upon making a big play with big-time talented players. And although West Hills got those big-time plays, they might have got them from more players in more ways and maybe more involvement from an entire roster. And that's a reflection on Coach of the Year.
Well, I appreciate that. But yeah, we definitely had kids who, I think of like an Elias Sanchez or a Jake Parrington. These are kids who only touched the ball for us a few times this year, and in other years would have been stars for us. We would have been creating ways to get these guys touches. But the depth of this group was such that, as you said, you could really share and get contributions from a lot of different places. But there were certainly players who were not able to show everything they could do just because, they had some guys in front of them. And whether that be seniors or underclassmen, but we certainly did have a very deep group this year.
Well, Dave, you mentioned a lot of times, it's easy to credit a quarterback, right? But Oberg, look, for as great as he was and as consistent he wasn't the most overwhelming quarterback in the county, in the East County maybe, but not maybe. We always talked about his ability, and maybe it's because of coaching and stuff like that you don't make those mistakes, Dave. You don't make the turnovers, and that's so costly sometimes to teams throughout. So these are why we heap the praises on Coach Ash. But Dave, you loved the talented Wolfpack. You were always raving not only about Oberg and Max and the Dillons, but guys like Dill and Calderon, guys who stepped up, those players that maybe got their growth because of the coaching, not only of Coach Ash and the staff, but the seniors as well, the leadership and the pack way of doing things.
Well, I think it was because, fortunate for a lot of the games that the varsity had this season, they were able to, especially early on, they were able to put up some pretty good scores and pretty much start to run away with it. And once they did that, they were fortunate to have a lot of time, sometimes a whole half or at least a whole quarter, where they would be able to have a guy like Colin Dill come in. And that's just at the quarterback position. But the funny thing is he was utilized also in many other positions. So it wasn't just the quarterback position. He could be a receiver. He could be involved in a double pass and not necessarily being the quarterback in that situation. Also, he was great on defense, made quite a few phenomenal tackles, actually, that I got to see myself. And, same thing. With Diego, that's a whole different animal there. I mean, for being just a sophomore, I saw a lot of what reminded me of a fullback, and I mentioned it like that a few times, of a Tom Rathman type, because he's a pretty big boy and more of a fullback type. However, I would say against El Capitan, I recall we really got to see the actual speed that he has. So it wasn't so much of being able to break tackles and maybe a stiff arm here and there, or even be able to run somebody down. It was more of the speed that we got to see. So didn't get to see as much of that, but Valhalla was another great game. You got to see him featured if you happen to be at that game quite often and early. So I think those are going to be just two of the key components, and the other players he was talking about, that weren't always on the bigger plays during the game, that are also playing other sports and are pretty big already and paying dividends for Coach Tim Berry and the basketball program. I mean, they've already played 4 games, for crying out loud, and they're 3-1. You start hearing about Parkington. You start hearing about Max Conaway, and they're already getting started. And I think they played actually more games than anybody in the East County for sure so far, and they didn't do too bad. So it tells me you got a lot of talent athletically in the whole department.
Yeah. Coach, expand on that. Let me put it this way. Were there areas that maybe you thought there were some deficiencies, as great as the team ended up being, that players did grow, step up, and make that big difference? And if so, maybe who were they?
Well, no, there were no areas in which I thought we were deficient, to be honest. Almost all of these guys got to play in the spring on varsity, and so we returned just about everybody, so that makes you feel good. Now, some of those roles ended up being filled maybe by different kids than I thought.
Sure.
For example, Diego's a great example. I'm coach of the year, but I had Diego playing JV football at the beginning of the year. He was on JV for the first couple games, and then I kind of brought him up to varsity to give him a chance to see what he had, and I couldn't put him back down then. So he was a guy who, I thought we maybe had 3 or 4 running backs that were better than Diego, and so let me just keep him down on JV instead of having him sit around up here. And once he got up there, that did not turn out to be the case. And certainly, Colin was one of the best sophomore performances we've had here in quite some time. So those are 2 obviously very special guys to build around. And then everybody else just kind of came through, with our kicking situation. Tyler Haley ended up doing a great job. Don't know if you could see that one coming. He had very little experience. Had only played a few games in JV, and that was it, coming over from soccer. But certainly he showed up in a big way. And everybody just kind of came through. Rice Schultz was another guy, underclassman, who played linebacker for us and did a great job. Braden Wilson played a lot for us in the spring as a sophomore, but obviously didn't know he was going to be the defensive player of the year in the league. So that maybe exceeded my expectations. But yeah, just a dozen cases like that of guys just being a little bit more than you had planned for. And that's how you go 10-0. Yeah.
Like I said, Dave, to be fair, West Hills, looked like they had a great team, looked like they were going to win a lot of ball games, but it's another thing to the pieces have to fall into place too. And maybe Coach Ash had a whirlwind of euphoria every time something worked out on the field. Dave, unless I've got a couple, we didn't come here to solely praise. I do have couple questions. I want to keep Coach Ash too long from his beloved Los Angeles Chargers. The game's underway, but I do have maybe, and Dave, you can comment on these questions as well. Coach, we had a great night in the quarterfinals. I don't want to make you represent, but I'm not going to probably talk to any other coaches, now that the season's over. So maybe you can kind of represent us and answer my hard-hitting questions on what happened. But we had a great round in the playoffs. In fact, to be fair, I think the East County was an overall winner as far as the regular season up until that point, winning the playoff games on that night. Even some of our teams that had not even tasted much playoff success recently came through with flying colors. So I praise us all for that. But then we hit a wall. And yes, we were underdogs, and I made no friends that week, especially Dave, picking against all of our teams. And I'm not saying the writing's on the wall. I'm just a guy picking the games, right? Trying to channel Dave's dad. But where is that? Where does it lie? Why couldn't we, not just the Wolfpack? Maybe you could talk about the Valley League in general, but where do we stand as a group in the East County? Is that our wall right there? Maybe this season? Was it just this season? Tell me it was just this season.
It was just this season, Ramon. Don't worry. I think this season for the East County maybe lacked fewer of the great teams and a lot of B-plus teams, a lot of really good teams throughout the East County.
But we had some nice wins, too, in the regular season that showed that maybe we were going to graduate a little further.
I would guess probably more East County teams advanced past the second round this season than in ever. But as you said, or past the first round, sorry. As you said, once we hit that second round, things changed. And, at that point, and obviously West Hills knows this as well as everybody, anybody never having been past the quarterfinal round, that's where things change. And everybody's very good at that point. And the quality of schedule you play comes into account there in the quarterfinals, and the preparation you've had with the tough teams you've played along the way. And I know there were a few East County teams who were close. I think Granite Hills had a shot there. Obviously, Helix has continued to advance, but that is where the rubber meets the road, generally speaking, in the second round of the playoffs. So for a lot of teams, maybe getting that first taste of getting past the first round in a while, and now they're ready to build off of that in the coming seasons. But it is it does get tougher as you go on, obviously. And obviously, we faced what turned out to be a great Ramona team, kind of just hit their stride as the playoffs started, and was not at all surprised to see them continue to have success this weekend as they moved on to the finals there.
Yeah, they looked very good, actually. So you always look and see the teams that you beat, but having the experience of having gone up there, and I know your fan base was totally jazzed, and I'm not saying you had any doubts at all. I mean, anybody who kind of follows it, Dave was rooting for his heart, and I love Dave for that, but you had to have your own, as confident as you had to be on the outside. You knew, and not only in your situation, that almost all three of I'm talking about those great Valley League teams, were in the same situation. A lot of our fans thought maybe we got jobbed a little bit on seedings. As it turned out, we were right in the right spot. You gotta win an upset game to get that respect anyway. So I'm not putting words in your mouth as to how you felt heading into that game. Speaking
specifically about Division III, which is where ourselves and Santana landed. This year's Division III was not your normal Division III bracket. So
you're right. Would have been a home game if you shake it out properly. But
I think in a lot of years, Mater Dei and Ramona, if we had played playoffs in the spring, would not have been in Division III this season. So that certainly changed things. And you saw some teams down there that you wouldn't usually see at that level. But it is what it is, and you got to show up and play. And all three squads had very challenging opponents. But when's the last time that so many teams from the Valley League advanced to the second round? I don't know that that's ever happened before.
Yeah, that's a job for that. That's where I've failed us, I think, in trying to find the silver lining a little bit. So, my next question will be for Dave, and I'll have Coach Ash overhear this, and maybe he'll react, or I know he'll have something to say. But Dave, I think the Grossmont Conference is in a little bit of a bind when it comes to the current format of the 7-4, the Hills League. Now that if they're going to refer to this playoff system, it does not pay dividends to go play superior teams. It really doesn't help your ranking anymore. Dave, can West Hills or El Capitan compete? They've both just recently left the Grossmont Hills League. This year, I think West Hills and El Capitan could have definitely had a great matchup with teams like Granite Hills, right, and Grossmont, and maybe even Steel Canyon or Helix. But could either of those teams sustain returning to the bigger league to help the situation out? Do you, Dave, think that it is a problem right now in the 7-4 format? I would like to know what the coaches think, Dave, if it's even a discussion amongst them year by year right now. Dave?
I think that right now, I mean, it was really based around how many. I mean, El Capitan and West Hills in particular were the ones most affected. I don't want to leave Valhalla out of it, but I think that those two were deeply affected year after year. Some of those teams that they had to play while they were in the Hills, with the type of squads, not that they didn't have the talented players, but a good case in point was this last week. I personally think, and Coach Werner and I can't give you all the discussion, but we talked about the modern day game, and in reality, we're talking about apples and oranges. I mean, in reality that I see, they're in the same division, but I don't agree, for example, that modern day, and not to say that El Capitan's not talented, but if you look at the modern day team and who they recruited and the type of players that were recruited, I think that they belonged more up at the D1 level. And I think that I don't understand how CIF would put that matchup together for that reason, or not even have possibly remove them from that division, or somebody more comparable to who they had on the team. I mean, honestly, my biggest case in point, when you have 4 or 5 guys leave with a concussion after a game like that, the physicality of it, that kind of tells you somewhat of the story of you shouldn't have them matching up together where they're far superior, especially when they're already up, say 33-0, and they're barely into the, let's say, second quarter of the game. And that's just one example. And I think I remember what Coach Ash said a couple of years ago when I first asked him when they made the change back down to the Valley after leaving many years up at the Hills. And I believe, not verbatim, but he had mentioned that, it's something that has to be earned on a regular basis in order to reach the Grossmont Hills Conference and to reach that status once again. So it's really, in reality, correct me if I'm wrong, it's we need to do the winning down here, and we need to do it year in and year out before we can graduate back up to where we were prior.
Coach, I think Dave might be dodging. I don't know, because I think he's saying that at this time, maybe that these two. speaking specifically of your two programs because of the great success, and I think the matchups with the Eagles or the Hillers would have been terrific games this season, maybe the Cougars as well. So, but that maybe isn't necessarily the case every year because we've seen the ebbs and flows for an El Capitan team, but this area, I mean, Lakeside, this area is expanding rapidly as far as population. You're also getting increased population, I believe, in Santee. Could either of these programs sustain it? Or I won't ask you that. Is there any talk among coaches about going back at all to five teams in the bigger league?
It is a conversation. It's really above the coach level. It gets conversed at the conference and principal level, and then the information kind of gets brought to us, and we provide some feedback. So
you guys do the best. I mean,
7-4 is not, I don't think, what anybody wants necessarily in terms of the split of the league. I think that much is pretty obvious. The guys in the big league, they want more games. And the guys in the little league, they want to be able to compete from week to week. And so 7-4 is kind of the way it breaks down right now. I think a lot of teams in the Valley League would like to be able to compete in the Hills League. And for one reason or another, don't feel that they're there right now. And that decision may be made for them. But I think we're searching for solutions. One thing might be to keep the 7-4 for right now, and maybe commit to some crossover games.
We had one this year, Coach. We had one crossover game this season, and it was the first one in like 2 or 3 seasons, I think, or at least maybe I think 2 seasons. I'm not sure, but we had one. I know that. So great point.
So that maybe gives the Hills League teams an extra game or two that they're looking for, so they don't have to go out of state or out of section. And for the Valley League teams, allows them to, not have to line up 4 of those Hills League teams in a row, but maybe play 1 or 2 over the course of the season. I know we opened up the spring with Grossmont. We'll open up next season with Grossmont. And I know there's several other teams. I know Valhalla played Steel this year. So that might be a possible solution. But, yeah, I don't think 7.
There's Valhalla and Granite. Valhalla and Granite, Casey.
Granite, thank you. But the big thing this year was there was no Division II teams in the Grossmont Conference. So there was kind of a big gap there between the top 4 Division I teams and then everybody else down in 3, 4, 5. So if we'll have to see how the CIF divisions are realigned after this year's playoffs. But maybe somebody gets bumped up in Division II, and then maybe there's a different conversation.
Yeah, Dave, I think the only other possibility, the Hills, you want to play all your league games consecutively, but that's what forces them to go out, because by the time they're ready to get ready for league, they have to wait so far into the season that every other team in the world, right, talking about the county, has been in their league play 2 weeks already. So that's why they can't. So the Hills League may be forced to kind of sprinkle their league schedule wider through the season and end up playing non-league games in between. That's just one other possibility. But Dave, I want to thank you for getting Coach Ash. I know we took him away from his beloved Los Angeles Chargers. I don't even know, Casey, if you're – I'm still with the Chargers, so I'm teasing you, though, because you looked great with that Charger uniform, honored last Sunday before the Chargers and the Vikings game. And when I saw that it said Coach Casey Ash is Chargers coach, and I thought, you know what? They finally got their man. Who needs Brandon Staley when you could have Coach Casey Ash, Dave? Thought they'd had a
I don't know if the Chargers want to run the Chargers going to be running the triple option.
They might be boring, but we know what? They would win, because that's what Coach does. They're winning. Great job, Coach. Congratulations, Dave.
I'd be happy to. Actually, you mentioned this game. I'd be happier to give him an orange and blue hat personally, but that's you know where I'm going with that.
I've got my work cut out for me with the Wolfpack here, so I'm good, and I appreciate y'all's coverage, guys. It's been a great season, a memorable season, and now it's time for us, at least, to crank it up and get ready for another one.
Yeah, take a little time. Okay, take a little time and enjoy the success that you all the acknowledgement, all the accolades, more still to come. I have a feeling, Dave. We'll spoil the beans. We'll spill the beans here, right? He's our coach of the year in the East County, and I think I think everyone kind of agrees. We had some great coaches. You can rattle them all off. The ones that went up there with Coach Casey to the stadium. You can, of course, Coach Owens, Coach Estes, Coach Osborne. I mean, look what they did in the playoffs, something that hadn't been done, Dave, in years and years and years. So we had a pretty good year, Dave, in the East County, despite me trying to throw us off the rails there at the end of the show.
Well, I think everybody in the East County, for the most part, got better. And that showed, just by getting through the first round. And I think that it goes to show that all of the teams in the Grossmont Conference have been improved. If not 100%, they've improved somewhat each year. And I think a lot of that does have to do with coaching, parenting, everything that goes on in the classroom. It's all of a collective. And if we can get all those together and get them to work for us perfectly, boy, we'd have some great teams every single year. But that's why they call it work. And so we always have our work cut out for us. But other than that, I know, Coach, what sticks out for me mostly that you said out of the conversation we had prior to this show, and this season and everything and all the accolades and all that beyond that. And I think that sums it up and could close out the show perfectly is since we are heading into Thanksgiving next week, Coach had mentioned that he has a lot to be thankful for this year, especially this Thanksgiving. And I couldn't agree with them more.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Those are some great words. Thank you so much, Coach. Congratulations. Hey, County Coach of the Year named by the Los Angeles Chargers, but he's our East County Coach of the Year, Coach Casey Ash of the West Hills Wolfpack, the Grossmont Valley League champions. He'll have a title to defend when we get rolling next year, and he'll have some talented players to take the field to do it. For Dave Dickens, I'm Ramon Scott. Thanks for joining us.